All right. Well, welcome again, everyone. Welcome to those of you who are watching the playback. Thank you all so much for being here, for your interest in this topic of trusting your intuition. This is part two in a six-part mini series that I am facilitating on the topic of bringing your medicine into the world. And I spoke a little more on this in the intro of part one. So if you want to watch that back, if you haven't, you're welcome to. That link will be available when I send out the playback, and it's also available through the website medicineweaver.org. But the main idea here is we're just going through this series of different maybe themes that I've identified as important elements to this task of bringing your medicine into the world, bringing more of your authentic true self into the world, as well as becoming a vessel for spirit, for the great mystery and the way that spirit moves through you, to bring healing, beauty, all kinds of love, magic, energy, whatever's needed, light into the world, and transformation, healing, tending to the wounds in the shadow, all kinds of things. Last time we spoke a little bit about how this can be very ordinary, like the example I used as a task as simple as cooking and nourishing people and bringing medicine that way, or maybe a little more extraordinary, eccentric gifts like some of the healing gifts, channeling. There's all kinds of ways that we can bring medicine in the world that's a little more like getting out of the way and just letting spirit move through. But then again, maybe when you're cooking, that's what happens. So really, there's no judgment on any of these. It's like we all have so much medicine and so many ways it comes through. And when Delphine and I spoke last month, we kicked it off with the topic of awakening your medicine gifts. And one of the themes in that conversation was that, this is very much an ongoing process. I see it that way, as that there's always more medicine to be awakened, or bigger portals, bigger containers we can hold for ourselves to step further and further into our gifts. Sometimes there's a moment when a new gift comes online, and it's like we really never know when is that going to happen and how and this and that. And maybe the sort of secret or the assured way to continue bringing your medicine into the world is to just follow your intuition, follow where your higher self is leading you. And so that's with today, our guest, my dear friend, Kate Vanden, is going to help us get a little deeper into this idea of trusting intuition, staying on path, that sort of thing. And Kate and I have known each other, I'm not sure how long, maybe like 7 years now, something like that.
I think it's closer to 5, but it feels like
Okay.
a lot.
5 years.
She's a little sister, but yeah,
Yeah.
we're
So
at that time.
Kate and I met in a coaching program with Earth-Based Institute that is called Nature Connected Coaching. And the program itself was a year-long intensive in sort of eco-therapeutic methods for coaching, very intuitive, very much about listening beneath the surface, and also listening to the land, listening to nature, like inner nature and outer nature as a form of guidance. And so that's how our friendship started. The first day that we met, we all hauled out as into the middle of nowhere in Eagle, Colorado, and it was like blazing hot summer day, and I was on this weird special diet, like trying to heal my gut, and I was carrying this gigantic box of like prepackaged food on basically like hiking down a hill, and the whole box was falling apart. And I remember seeing Kate, and she just started laughing at me, and it was like we were just like basically friends from that moment on. And she has since, I mean, I think Kate, I don't know, you can tell us, but are you all still hearing me? My internet maybe froze up. Okay, good. I think before we knew each other, Kate was working with the oracle cards quite a lot, and she has since then become a great teacher for me in my own practice of working with the tarot, working with pulling cards. And she pulls cards for me on a monthly basis. I'm oftentimes blown away, sometimes in uncomfortable ways, by the accuracy of the readings. So so that's a little bit of our history, a little bit of who Kate is. And yeah, I think maybe I'll pass it off to you, Kate, to say hello and intro yourself if you want to add anything to that. And maybe to frame it, what I would say, I would invite you to share is like, how did you get into this work of helping people trust your intuition? Or what's that story?
Nice. Well, hi everybody. I'm very happy to be here today, and the it's always one of those really really weird questions, like who are you? Tell us about yourself. When we're such complicated creatures, so it's there. This is almost this whole thing today is part of the example of trusting our intuition. Like Megan and I talked about it. It's like actually just letting come out what needs to be said without planning and thinking about it too much. So we're literally the example of trusting our intuition today, and we have the idea and the concept, and this is the product of that. So what actually happens over the next 90 minutes, we have a concept of it, but what's going to happen will be intuitively led by both of us. And that is something that I had to learn because I grew up a very academic focused straight A student. That was my entire identity, was external validation, getting the grades, getting following the rules, doing things that were then rewarded with external validation, a grade, a certificate, a degree. And it was never fulfilling, but I was constantly on a quest of finding, needing more, needing to do more, be more, find better answers. And my journey, which is great to look back in hindsight now, I always think about it like a pinball machine. So it was being pinged along between very randomly connected things that actually now all totally make sense. So a lot of what I work on with clients is actually looking back in hindsight and seeing how the path has led you to where you are today. But my path was very academic, and it was very logical and analytical, and I was never satisfied. There was always this point of self-criticism and reflecting back, and again needing to do more, chasing and feeling the need to perform. And what shifted, so just a brief history around that, there was my first career was in sports medicine. And then I moved in because I didn't know enough and I couldn't help enough with my clients. So I moved into osteopathic medicine for another 6 years. That still wasn't giving me the answers that I wanted. So I then started looking at more of the holistic human behavioral and the psychology and the NLP. And that's where I evolved into coaching, but I still wasn't getting the answers that I needed. And what happened was actually, Megan was this very significant shift was up in Eagle, Colorado for me, where I realized that I didn't have to do all the work myself. And that was a very significant moment where turning it over to spirit, God, the universe, whatever noun works for you in terms of what other external presence is in your life that we co-create with. But for the first time in my life, I actually realized that I didn't have to know everything. It wasn't my responsibility to memorize everything in a textbook and be able to reiterate it when a client or a patient came into the room. I didn't have to try and remember everything. And what that does is that frees you up to actually anything is possible, rather than just being able to help and serve somebody from my whatever limited experience is up to that date. Because when we rely on our intellect, we actually can only tap into either a past experience or what we know and what we have learned. When we tap into our intuition, we're tapping into a world that is way beyond anything that we have conscious awareness of, but it's still a knowing. So that's kind of where I evolved in terms of the coaching work that I'm doing with clients. Is for me personally, it means the pressure's off. I don't have to fix anybody. They're coming to me for guidance, and I'm a mirror and a reflection back to what I'm seeing and hearing. But we're in a co-creative process, and that means that anything is possible, and like huge amounts of magic is really happening in the client sessions that I'm doing. So does that kind of give you a little bit of context, Megan? Is there anything else that I'm missing? Oh,
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, that's a great starting point. And one of the things that stands out to me in what you shared that is maybe common in my own journey with starting to open more to other realms, when I first came into what I think is like, I guess, shamanic practice. When the first step I took into, I'd never even heard that word before in my life. I grew up in Ohio and very like conservative. I don't know, I just wasn't exposed. And someone invited me to an ayahuasca ceremony, um, and the first ceremony, like the medicine literally would not, nothing was happening. It was misery. I had prepared for months. It was like everything was riding on this because I was really struggling with a number of things and I just couldn't get past. Like people kept telling me, listen to your heart, just like do whatever's in your heart. And every time I'd try to connect to my heart, it felt like there was like this, like almost like it'd give me anxiety. It felt just a very strong energetic block there. I'm like, I have no idea how to move this, but going to this ceremony is going to help me. And I got to the ceremony and it was just like everyone's, puking, there's songs, people are having these huge experiences, and I'm just standing there like sitting there in misery, like what is going on, what is wrong. And I went up for a healing, and the message I got from the healer was like, the medicine doesn't feel safe, it doesn't feel like she's welcome with you, and you have to let her know that you want her help. And I was like, okay, how do I, okay, I'm trying and I just can't. And she keeps trying to give me a healing and she just stops. She's like, look, I don't think this is your path. Like you're completely closed off to it. And I went back to my seat and I just broke down and started bawling. And in that moment, the medicine just flooded in. And through that experience, I went into this very dark place. That it was like a dark alley with dogs coming at me. There was broken glass. I was so scared. I was alone. And all I could think of was to start asking for help. And in that moment, everything changed and the whole ceremony became very positive and uplifting. But what I came away from it with was this recognition of how habitual it was for me to not ask for help. And learning to ask for help was like the thing that I've needed to learn over and over and over again since then. But it was also like the catalyzing moment to open me to my own heart, my own deeper knowing, my own intuition, my own connection to spirit. So I just heard that some in your story too, that like part of it is opening to help.
And even thinking about that, then I'm sure a lot of people can relate. There is a frustration around being told, just open your heart. Like you just need a key and you just unlock it and then everything's going to be fine. And there's this feeling of just like epic failure that I don't know how, like I want to, even worse, I think I am. And then you go into a healing situation or, Reiki and you've got a real block in your heart. And intellectually, again, for an achiever, mind says, but I want to open my heart. So then we'll instinctively go and try and find all of the different ways, all of the different practices, healing, modalities, energy work, and just open my heart, open my heart, open my heart. But it's in allowing and actually letting go, and literally that phrase, letting go and letting God, that actually opens up and allows the help and the medicine to come flooding in. But that's a part of what we're going to talk about, is there's the element of getting our intellect out of the way allows our intuition in. And even when we're here right now talking about intuition, we're still intellectualizing it in some way because we're putting words around it, we're putting concepts around it, we're putting a timeline around it. That's all very intellectual, and that affects our ability to hear. And it's the important part of, first of all, acknowledging it and recognizing it, because we need both. Like we live in the 3D world where we need to have both parts of our brain working. Our intellect is important, and as well as our intuition. But what's happening is that our intellect is actually overpowering, and it shouts louder, it speaks louder, it has a more forceful energy and emotion behind it, so it tends to get more attention. And we need to find, for a real true balance in our life, we need to find the balance between the two of them. That's what I would say about that.
And so what has worked for you in that journey, or how have you learned to get your intellect out of the way or to hear your intuition?
recognizing it first. And I think there it is, again, that the dance between recognizing that is the what some people will know as the monkey mind, the chatter, our inner critic. That is all intellectual ego based, and it's pretty loud. I'm sure most of us can agree that that's actually a very loud, dominant voice that we have in our life. And again, it might not even be coming from us. It could be coming from expectations from other people, from teachers, from parents, from siblings. And for me, it's recognizing it and acknowledging it first and turning it. You know, I always talk about turning and facing and having a conversation with that part of yourself, because again, from an intellectual perspective, if somebody says, listen to your intuition, we tend to want to just, okay, well, then I need to stop listening to my intellect, and or that part of me is bad or not good for me, so I'm going to dissociate and disown that part of me because I'm all about listening to my intuition and listening to my heart. But then you still become fragmented and dissociated in yourself. So for me, one of the first things to do is actually turn and acknowledge that this is where your intellectual mind is stepping in and where it can be of use in your life. And it's allowing, I don't need you right now. I understand, I hear what you're saying, I understand you're worried about this. It's usually with fears and stuff that come up. I'm going to just ask you to step aside because I need to just center and ground in myself and go and talk to this other part of me. So they're learning to listen. And one of the first things, and we'll do that today, is actually becoming present. Getting back into, again, if we think metaphorically and symbolically, intellect is head, intuition is body. We are embodying the messages. When even our language is coming intellectually because it's coming from our head. So to listen and feel your intuition is actually getting into the sensory awareness of your body is one of the first things to do. Ground and become present. Intellect, if we think about in terms of it's past analysis, it's looking what has happened in the past, therefore it's predicting the future based on what was. Intuition is now. We have to be in the here and now so that we're actually opening our awareness, all of our senses, to what is happening right now without the baggage and the presumptions and the assumptions that come from the analytical part of our personality. So getting present. And then it's the developing trust. And I've talked to Megan about this before in the past, and we break trust with ourselves. So the first thing, and I think this was kind of something that seemed to be a little eye-opening to a lot of people that I've talked to about this, where we have this concept where we're in relationship with others and we either trust them or we don't trust them. If they've done something that has broken our trust, they have to earn it back generally for us to trust them again. It isn't just a case of walking in the door and so-and-so saying, you need to trust me again. You're like, okay, I'm going to trust you again. It doesn't work like that. And we know it doesn't work like that when we work with other people. They have to gradually, consistently, through small actions and through small demonstrations, show that they are once again trustworthy. We have that same relationship with our own intuition, or with that part of ourself. Our intuition doesn't shout at us. It speaks. It's always talking, but it is very delicate. And because there isn't an emotional charge to it, it doesn't have a tantrum like your ego and sometimes your intellectual mind can. It just speaks truth. And if you continue to ignore it, then it's like that therapist that you go to is like, why are you asking for my advice that you never take? I'm just going to stop giving you advice. We have to re-establish trust with ourself first. And by doing that is small, consistent actions. And the Oracle cards for me are one of the ways that I did that for myself. My first experience with cards was, am I going to date myself now? 15 years ago when I got divorced. And that was my first real breakdown and brokenhearted, where my mind couldn't fix the situation. And I needed to ask for help, and I needed to ask for something outside of myself. So I started going and seeing readers. And what has been interesting over that 15-year shift is I remember still going to them and almost still giving my power away. And it was like, please, still, I am here and I'm open to messages outside of what I can see, but I still need you to tell me. And through that process, that's still in a way disempowering, but it was a way of starting. Because through the process of me listening to other people reading for me, I started developing trust within myself. And it's taken 12, 15 years to get to where I am now, where the arc of that is I will trust my own readings first. And then if somebody else reads for me and they confirm what I've just said, then it's like a double bonus. But it didn't happen overnight. I had to develop trust. And part of me doing that was asking for help, allowing guidance in. And even if the guidance is coming from another coach, reader, spiritual healer, I had to take that on board and do something with it. I had to consistently show up and show to myself that I'm trustworthy by following like crazy, get on a bus and buy a bus ticket and just go somewhere in London. Like that logically and intellectually is insane. But to be able to actually, that's the guidance and the advice I was just given, to be able to, and it was actually a plane ticket to Australia that I did, so it was even bigger than a bus trip around London. I just got on a plane and I ended up in Australia, and that was a big pivotal point in my life. And there was, so my point being, there's small consistent actions where you get the feedback that, oh, I was right, that was a good intuitive hit, or you start being more aware of chills. We always talk about, oh my God, that gave me chills. Start being aware when those chills happen. Were you just thinking about something? Are you seeing number patterns? This is actually one of the first things that really blew my mind in a frustrating way to start with. If you keep seeing number patterns, 1111 is one of my big ones. 222. Notice, you see a sign and notice what happens, and then you start to learn and you start to see patterns and you start to interpret the messages that are important for you, because this is also very personal. Whatever you get as an intuitive hit is very personal to you. So if we come back to the cards, they all have guidebooks, and that was the intention behind the card creator, but that doesn't mean that has to be your interpretation of the card. If you choose to work with cards, the first thing that you get, the first hit that you get, isn't necessarily an intellectual one. Might not even be words around it. You might feel something. You might feel sadness. You might feel happiness. You might feel relief. You might feel fear because you're being asked to do something that's outside your comfort zone. And then learning to just trust and interpret. And then you can go to the guidebook and actually look at, okay, well, my hit was right for that. That did make sense. Is that making sense? You're building up a catalog of evidence that you can start to trust yourself again. So you start tipping that balance into trusting yourself first before you start looking to others to validate you. You muted.
I keep doing that. Sorry. I love the analogy of rebuilding trust with yourself, similar to rebuilding trust with someone who's broken trust with you. And I think what I'm hearing in that, and what we've talked about before that I love this idea of, is that, like, say I'm having trouble trusting my own intuition, or someone's struggling with that it's probably indicative of a trust break that's happened in my relationship with myself. That there's a way that I've broken trust with myself, that I don't trust myself, that I don't trust my decision making, or something like that. And so in order to really strengthen the connection to intuition, it requires like kind of almost like repairing or healing or rebuilding trust with yourself.
Yeah, well, a lot of the real examples that we'll talk about is actually relationships. It's when something has gone, it was the hindsight thing again. It's when something has gone very perceived to be wrong in your life, and then you look back in hindsight and you hear it all the time. I knew I should have done this. I knew this was coming, but I didn't trust myself. I had the intuitive hit that so-and-so was cheating on me, or my business partner was stealing money, or whatever it is. I knew, but I didn't do anything about it. So that's almost like a double-edged sword at the time, because and I think in hindsight, we can be very harsh in this situation. And it's always a reminder with clients, you do the best you can with the resources that you have available at the time. And what that situation could have done is prepped you for now, because by looking back in hindsight and reliving it in terms of if I had listened then, and noticing what you did notice then and how you would respond differently now, is evolution. But there's the double-edged sword, is I didn't trust myself at the time. So our brain then says, I didn't trust myself. I'm not trustworthy. And then in hindsight, you look back and you're like, I didn't trust myself, because if I had trusted myself, that wouldn't have happened. So now I don't trust myself in the future because I'm looking back at the past and I didn't trust myself then. You get into this cyclical loop of not always questioning whether something that you are intuitively being told or getting a hit from, or however it appears for you, but you don't trust it because there is an association with getting those hits and pain, getting those hits and pain. So that's one of the first cycles that you have to break in order to rebuild that trust. Does that make sense?
The cycle you have, what's the cycle that you have to break?
I get an intuitive hit, but when I had the intuitive hit last time, I didn't trust it and I ended up in pain. So we've got intuitive hit, trust, pain, intuitive hit, not trust, pain. It's that kind of cycle that we work through, that it's breaking that every time you listen into an intuitive hit, it isn't going to result in pain. Sometimes actually we have to go through these situations so that we learn and grow.
So it's like sometimes, if I'm following you, sometimes following your intuition can lead to painful situations or challenging
Unfortunately, it's
situations.
part of life.
And then also sometimes ignoring your intuition can lead to
Right.
painful situations.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe some of it too is like when you're saying, I can't trust myself. Is it I can't trust my intuition, or is it I can't trust my mind? And recognizing like which how did that decision, if there's a trust break or a frustration or sort of a wound from the past that is impacting someone's ability um, to make decisions or to trust themselves, like what happened there? Was the decision based in intellect? Were you even listening did you take time to listen? How
Right.
was the decision made? Or did you take time to listen and you made the decision based on your intuition and then it ended up being like really challenging?
Most of the time, I'm going to be honest with you, it's where they have listened and then they didn't act on it. So very rarely are people in a trauma now where I don't hear, and I wouldn't, even just from my life, I don't look back and regret any decision that was based intuitively. It might not have been pleasant, but I don't regret it because I can feel that it was in alignment with where I needed to go, who I needed to be at the time. And there's almost a journey that you can see that unfolded because of that decision. And it may have been uncomfortable. Where there tends to be the people that I'm working with, there's the pattern of even getting an intuitive hit and even knowing that you're supposed to do something with this, and then you do the opposite because you justify that. Maybe again, we use the marriage example. I know my husband's having an affair and I just intuitively know it. You might not know it, you might not have seen the evidence or whatever, but you just know that there's something that's not right. The other side then kicks in with, but if maybe I'm crazy, I can't trust this intuitive hit, he'll think that, that I'm the one that's the problem. And if I confront him, then I'm going to lose the house. Where are the kids going to live? Like our brain kicks in with all of the reasons why that intuitive nudge is wrong and how it has to be wrong because all of this other stuff seems logically right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for me, what it feels like generally is the pattern is there. People know in hindsight, they will say, I knew, like I knew, and I even knew what I was supposed to do, but I didn't do it. That for me is the fundamental trust break, when you didn't follow through on your own knowing.
Yeah. I can relate to that. I mean, major life decisions I've made based on intuition, and some of them have led me into real real shitstorms in my life. But I don't like, I'm not shaky in those decisions because I know it was what was needed for my own growth and evolution, or karmic resolution, or whatever was there. Um, so I'm curious, like you keep referencing this notion of like an intuitive hit, and like it sounds like building trust and intuition is based on, in your view, like these small steps of just like getting a hit, honoring it, and then reflecting. Maybe there's a reflection process on like how did that go, where did that lead, what was the impact of that, and even like making conscious time for, on a regular basis, I'm guessing, to actually listen. or or is that the case? Like, where do these hits come from? When do they come? What does that look like, in your view?
The first thing I would definitely say is decision points. When there is a point where you have to decide this way or that way, that's definitely where you will get a pull towards one of two options. And it could be a small decision as to what do I have for dinner tonight. If you stand at like one thing, you open the fridge. What am I actually being pulled towards tonight? And then your brain might kick in and actually, no, you need to have this because you're counting your macros and you're on this dietary plan and blah, blah, blah. That's a very simple example of you just went against where you were being physically, and it's not even physically, it's for me, and I do believe it's different for everybody. There is a visceral sensory response to a decision, and you can go with it. It's, again, that's like being pulled with it, or you can block it and not allow yourself to go with the flow. And because your brain kicks in and you justify it and you make an intellectual decision. So definitely for me, I would say around pretty much all decisions, any decision you need to make, there's an intuitive response is what's the right way to go with this. And then there's the intellectual response. And hopefully they start to come closer together. Where else would you, I think there's the phenomenon where you just know, like, I just know Megan's going to text me, and it's a fleeting awareness, and then Megan texts me, and there wasn't anything hanging on that information. It was I guess a breeze that comes through with a piece of information. You're like, Megan's going to text me. And that it doesn't have an emotional charge from it. And so this is the other way for me, is how I know when something is an intuitive hit, is there's no emotion in it. It just is. It pretty much is just, all right, well, yeah, Megan's going to text me, or I'm going to eat salad tonight, or, it's not a resignation. It's just, there isn't a charge to it. There's no fear. There's no hope. I think to really know the difference is notice, and we'll talk about this when the cards come out as well, is like, how did you feel? Like, is it just a knowing that is an emotionally neutral response, or is there a fear? Is there a hope? Is there an anxiety? Is there a charge that comes with this piece of information that comes in? The other, for me, intuitively, is I pay a lot of attention to signs and symbols, and animals are one of my spirit guides. I will always pay attention if there is if something catches my eye. That's one of the easiest ways I would say, is the first, if I'm going about my day, and part of it, you need to be sensory aware. So it's always making sure that you have your spidey senses online. But notice if a number plate on a car catches your eye, if there's a bird that comes out of the corner of your eye that catches your eye, and questioning it, getting curious about, oh, that's interesting. What was I thinking about that time? What was I asking a question? And I'm saying you have to do this for everything, but there's the first sign is, did it catch my attention? Without me, you don't look for them. I don't think you don't sit there and look for spirit numbers to come up, or there's things that come into your awareness which are outside of your control. I think it's one of the ways. What else? What am I missing?
Well,
I mean, music is another one as well. So there's, if we're talking about all sensory awareness, is thinking symbolically, metaphorically, with all of your senses. If you hear something, if you hear a piece of music that catches your attention, if you smell something that catches your attention, if there's a tingly sensation on your skin, that's an intuitive hit. There is something your body is responding to, a stimulation outside of you. And if you're I think there's it's like mail, right? It just feels like there's just for me it's just a breeze of information. It's not forced. It's a very natural flow of information that comes in that is unemotional, but staying open and curious.
Yeah, I like that. In the beginning, you were talking about the monkey mind being an indicator of being disconnected from intuition, which comes in the present moment, and then also emotional charge, which, I mean, in my experience, sometimes like the intuitive information I receive about a decision, like I will have both. So there'll be a knowing that comes, but then there's my personality's response to the fallout of what that decision will look like. So it's like there could be an emotional charge, but not around the information itself. Like the information itself is actually just there and rooted. And one of the things that's standing out about what you're saying to me is like the more that you're in the body, the more that you're in the present moment and listening to your five senses, or just feeling. Like one of the things I do is just feel what something feels like in my body when there are two decisions, or I'll just imagine holding one decision in one hand and one decision in the other. Or I feel into my heart, like how does my heart like physically feel, energetically feel when I imagine, when I just ask the question. Sometimes it's that simple. I'll also just get really present and listen and see. I mean, this is way easier for me with clients versus myself. but when someone's talking, sometimes I'll just start to imagine something because I'm like super present and just listening, and an image will come or a word will come. And it's just like, I don't know why I keep thinking this word. And I'll sometimes just say that actual phrase, like, this word just keeps running in my mind. And then oftentimes that sparks something for the person and we just take it from there. So, for me, there are a lot of different ways that intuition can come. It can come in words, it can come in images, it can come in physical sensation in my body, in my gut, especially, or just hearing something. Sometimes it's like when someone's talking to me, it feels like spirit is speaking straight to me. It might just be like 4 words they said or one sentence, but it just lands in me in a different way, or a dream that just sticks. And it's like, it feels like a different kind of dream. So I feel like there are all kinds of ways. And I'm sure people listening, everyone has their own unique way of hearing their higher self. To me, intuition is the voice of the higher self, or the voice of our spirit guides, and our helping spirits, just supporting us in finding a path of harmony that's aligned with our growth and our mission and that kind of thing.
And I'll say, that's a great point where we're actually used as mirrors for each other. So that, again, seeking somebody who can intuitively reflect back to you is also a way of your intuition talking to you. So if there is somebody that you spend time with that is also very in tune and empathic to their intuition, they are going to channel messages for you. So it's like that, again, two-way message where it comes in. It's like they're we're hearing and seeing something through somebody else, but it's still a message for us. Again, that's that we're so interconnected with each other, and this comes back down to asking for help. Is that we can't do this alone. Whether we're asking for help from spirit, whether we're asking for help from each other, whether a coach, a friend, a whatever that looks like in that moment for you. When we ask for help, we have to then allow to receive. And again, using divination tools is you ask them, you have to then trust the answer. Like that's part of the deal. And that, again, whereas we consistently will trust break is when oracle cards, we call it oracle card abuse. When you pull a card, nope, don't like that one. Pull another one, nope, don't like that one. Pull another and put it back in the deck, put it back in the deck. I mean, it's just, I've got a friend of mine, which, I mean, I can tell you this story because she laughs about it all the time, but it was, okay, can you pull me a card? Like, I'm having all of this anxiety. So I'd pull one. She's like, nope, I need another one. I don't like that answer. I need another one. Like, well, I'm sorry, that's the answer. But again, that's what we do with ourselves. And when we play with the oracle cards in a minute, just bear that in mind. It's like, are you resistant to the message because of ego? Are you resistant to the message because you're not allowing the message in, or you're preconceiving what you think that should mean? But it's building that trust again. It's knowing. So this is the other thing which we actually haven't said. Everybody is intuitive. Everyone. And I know we pay for intuitive card readers, and we pay to go to psychics and mediums and energy healers. But the reality is every single human being walking is intuitive. We all have an intuitive ability. Some of us have just started paying attention to it and developing it, but it doesn't mean that we're any different than the rest of you.
Yeah, in my view with that is even the role of an intuitive healer or reader or this or that is to point someone back to their own intuition, to their own knowing, is to empower them and like open doors to help them awaken their intuition. It's not to be the one who has the answers.
Well, one of the it's interesting as she's saying that you're talking about hearing. One of the phrases that is very important is, "Does that resonate with me?" And that's when we're now talking about energetic vibration. Is, oh my God, yeah, what that person said, or I was watching this show, or was listening to that really resonated with me. If you actually think about what we're saying, is that means it vibed with me. It hit a part of me, and it resonated in alignment and in tune with my own energy system. Because sometimes whatever word it's something's repelling, or it just feels almost like a clang, you imagine in sound, where something resonates, it's in flow, it's in wave, and it means you're in alignment with that piece of information, that whatever that is, that phrase, the song, the information that's been passed to you. So even when you're sitting in front of somebody who is, let's say, reading for you or coaching for you, the power is still with you, because the information that they are giving you, you have the choice what you take on board and what you don't, what resonates with you as true. And that, again, is a phrase: take what resonates and leave the rest. What do I feel is true in this statement, in this book, in this song, in whatever it is? That's what's important for you to take away. So that's where the power is still, even if there's another person or medium that's the mode of transfer of the information, what you take on board is still always in your control and in your power.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've certainly had experiences where I've given my power away, especially early on, to intuitive reading, psychic reading. And what I've learned from that is there is sometimes really good information, and then the ego we're all fallible, it's I've done this where it's like I get information that's very intuitive and clean, but then my ego comes in and creates a story around it and interprets it. And it's like, really, that's what I've learned in my practice. That's not my role. Like my role is just to deliver the information as cleanly as possible. But any healer is fallible. Any human being is fallible. So it's like ultimately our relationship with ourself is our greatest source of power. And like even like, power as a word can be kind of triggering, but I think power is really just realized potential. And so it's like building a relationship with ourselves, building a relationship with our own knowing and our own like confidence in our knowing and a commitment to acting on that is how we come into our potential in a lot of ways. And did you want to say something?
No, I was going to say that power is, it's, again, an interesting concept. So power can be aggressive, and power can be the source of grounding and knowing in terms of our power to be able to make a decision means that we are less swayed by others. It's the analogy of the tree. When we are grounded in our own knowing of who we are and what resonates as true for us, we are not swayed by the wind of the world around us. There's a misconception around power in terms of what some people interpret that as, and again, you can change whatever word that is, but it's the grounded knowing that keeps you centered and strong in self, that the true empowerment comes from.
Yeah, and I think all of like this whole conversation, I want to make sure we get moving towards the exercise that Kate has designed. It's like what it's pointing out to me, which is exactly where we're headed, is just how important it is to build trust in ourselves, to build a really strong relationship with ourselves and our own knowing. Requires creating a container, like making space for that relationship, first of all, like making space to get present, to ask questions, like when there's an important decision or when there's a little decision, like what to eat for dinner, but actually creating space to listen, right? And then also to act on it and reflect on it or something like that, and to really like to be in a ongoing process of honoring the information, something like that. So maybe we'll I know you spoke a little bit to the notion that your relationship with the oracle cards has really helped you do that, to create a container on a daily basis to be in relationship with your own intuition. And I don't know if you're ready to dive into that, or do you want to do a little background prep talking about how you work with the cards?
You can kind of just do both. If we want to, I can start framing up and getting ready to do the exercise. And so what we're going to do, the intention for today is we're going to walk through one of the practices that I do. And it's just a daily, and say not just, it's very simple, but it's very powerful. And it's part of, again, a consistent practice where you don't have to do it the way that I do it. This is just an example of something to do. There is no right or wrong here. And we're going to pull 3 cards today, which are daily guidance for messages for the day. And because everybody has probably got different decks, if you don't have a deck, and I will say this now, grab a book. If you don't have a deck, this is just as easy. Find a book near you that has quite a number of pages and is inspirational. This will work just as well with the book. But what we're going to do is we're going to pull 3 cards. We're going to ground, and then we're going to pull 3 cards, and you're going to intuit what the messages are for you for that day. And then we'll go into a Q&A afterwards. So in terms of oracle cards, are a divination tool, and I just want to frame this up as they are an extension of you, and they are not the only form of divination. You play with runes, you can have a pendulum, you can have playing cards, or people will work with anything that works with you. It's a very personal tool for you to use. What I love about oracle cards is the layers. There's a lot of depth. When you're learning with a pendulum, it gets very frustrating because it's yes or no, and it doesn't help rebuild a relationship of trust. Believe me, it gets very frustrating. And I was laughing with somebody the other day, there's a number of pendulums that you can buy or that's going to fix the problem, because the problem is actually you. And so that's what we want to think about, is there is nothing magical about cards. They are an interpretation of you. So if you go to an intuitive reader, they are using the cards as an extension of themselves. So let's frame that up first. That the cards don't magically jump around and decide what to come out with. They're a way for you to externalize unconscious conversations. So whatever comes through in terms of feeling, symbolism, colors, numbers, that's why I love oracle cards a lot, and tarot as well. There is a wide variety of ways that they can talk to you, and depending on where you're at in terms of how well you know your cards, or maybe even just where you're at in terms of your day, it can be a very superficial one-word answer. Forgiveness. All right, got it. Or it could be forgiveness of self, looking at others, going through past lives, going through, you can dive down deeper into what does forgiveness mean for me today? How can I show up in terms of forgiveness? And that's what I love about them. There's a lot. I like a story. So with also the way that I'll use cards is I look at them all as a story together. They're not individual with each other. And so my tendency is to overpull a conversation because I like a long, lengthy conversation. But in terms of time today and sanity of most people, we're just going to keep it to 3, so that there's no overwhelm. And so anything else I'm missing, Megan? Does that explain everything? Does anybody have any questions about that before we get going?
If you have questions, you can pop them in the chat. But yeah, and Kate's going to kind of guide the process too. So
yeah, so again, we're going to pull 3 questions, 3 cards for 3 questions, and the questions are designed today so that they can be applicable for it doesn't matter what deck you're using. If you have a deck that you love, or even if you have questions that you prefer, use your own questions. This is your journey. It was just designed for a group exercise today. So they're pretty high level and pretty basic. The idea is that once we get going, we're going to go straight from a grounding meditation straight into pulling the cards. So if you want to grab them, make sure they're out in front of you. While I'm talking, take a few minutes just to shuffle through them. You want to journal, we're going to pull cards, and then you're just going to take a few minutes just to write down what messages come through for you on that. So one way also that I like to is I tap my cards 3 times, and whenever I pick them up, that's just a super quick way, or you can bang them on the table 3 times. But the intention behind that is I am telling them that we're starting a fresh reading. All previous energy is gone, and I'm here and present with you today. So that's just one thing that I do. The other way before you start a reading, you can just sage the area. The idea being you want to engage all your sensory awareness so that you're present here and now. Sage the area, get into a comfortable seat, get a drink that you really enjoy. Make sure you're comfortable in your body wherever you're sitting. And be prepared to be quiet and ready to receive the answers. Now, this also does not need to be a lengthy. We'll probably take about 20 minutes. I think we're probably doing this today. This does not need to take 20 minutes every day, but it can, or it can take 40 minutes. This is just an example of what I would do if I was doing when I do this. So you can blast through this a lot quicker, but I'm going to give you a copy of the questions and everything that we go through today so that you can reuse it in the future, or create your own questions. Well, how much you journal is up to you. And some people like to journal, some people don't, and that's okay. The idea is that you do you, and this is a suggestion, and you can make the decisions as to what's going to be better for you for your day ahead. All right. Is there any questions I need to address?
One question from Shannon. If you're using a book, what do you do if you aren't shuffling and pulling cards?
So tap the book and just set the intention that you're going to actually use the book today to get messages from it. And instead of shuffling the deck, what you want to do with a book is just flick, right? You just flick through it 3 times. So I'm going to say we're going to pull card number 1. All right, well, I'm just going to flick. I'm going to open it to this page. And then depending on, again, what the content of the book is, where are you intuitively drawn? You might just gaze at the page and notice what words jump out at you. That's a message. There might be a paragraph that jumps out at you, or it might be the whole page that jumps out at you. But just have some fun with it. Just play with it. And my suggestion for all of this is you're going to trust the card that comes out. You're going to trust the page that comes out. Even, I know that we've already talked about it, but just trust it and just see what happens. Now, the other thing that we're going to be, so if you're using cards, you'll have a guidebook, and I highly recommend you use a guidebook. But what I recommend you do first is you actually sit with the cards yourself. So notice what you notice. Notice how you feel when the card comes out. Is there an overwhelming emotion that comes out? What is the first thing you notice in terms of the message? And it might not even have anything to do with the card. And this is important. These are just tools and they're extensions. So notice what you notice. What jumps out at you from the card? Is it a word? Is it an image? Is it numbers? Does it remind you of something else that is going on maybe in your life right now? Is there a symbolism that it connects to a conversation that you had yesterday? Or maybe it's like, oh, we were just talking about hummingbirds. And then that gives you a spiraled conversation, like a thread that you can pull on that means something related to something else. So this also is not in isolation. This is an extension of you, so it's an extension of everything that you're experiencing right now. And then go to the guidebook. So if you we're going to pull 3 cards and we're going to put them all out. So we're going to do one at a time, but I recommend you leave them all out. And you can then see if there's a thread of a theme that weaves all the way through them. Is there a color that weaves all the way through them? Is there, if you're in touch with the chakras, I always will pay attention to, is there a dominant color? So is that a message that's talking to me about which chakra might need some attention today? Is there an element? This is one thing that I always like to look for too: fire, earth, air, and water. What element is dominant in the cards or cards that you have? That's also a message to you, because if there's you'll see things other people won't see. And the idea behind this is that you trust that first. Okay, does that make sense, everybody? Any other questions?
A couple more questions. One is, if a card falls out, do we use that card?
You trust your intuition.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great question. And we get sometimes jumpy decks, right? And what that tends to be is there's actually a lot of energy coming through you into the deck, and you can get some jumpy ones. If you're getting there's no hard and fast rule, but let's just say a guidance for today is, if it's more than 1 card, let's put them back. Okay, so we only want 1 card per question. However, the caveat being, if 2 cards jump out and it feels right, leave the 2 cards out. There's no right or wrong here. As a general rule, you'll know if it's a jumpy card or if it's just bad shuffling. Okay, does that make sense? Like if you drop a whole bunch of cards, and that's just it feels like a mistake, or it feels like, oh, that card really wants my attention. Play with it and just trust it and just see. Other questions?
The other question was, do you tend to scan the cards, sensing which to pick, or more quickly shuffle and pick off the top?
Again, that's completely up to the user. And again, I don't want to just say you'll know, because that's dismissive, but you'll know, and you'll feel into it in terms of, well, let's start with a caveat. You can do no wrong. Okay, so you're not going to do this wrong. Whatever card comes out, let's trust is the right card for you. So again, if it feels maybe you don't like to shuffle cards and you just want to just move them around and spread them out and just pick up some cards and flip them over. Depending on what deck you use, but again, let's just say for today, unless you're really, you know how to use your cards and you use this a lot. Let's turn all cards upright. Okay, because this is another trigger. When a card comes out upside down, people get a little bit tweaky about it. So let's just turn all cards upright and read them all upright, unless you personally know your deck and you want to read it upside down. Does that make sense? Anybody? Has everybody got a deck of cards or a book? A journal? You ready to go? You ready to start your day? All right, should we get going?
Yeah, let's do it.
Megan? All right. I am going to share my screen. Okay, so first of all, I just want you just to close your eyes, guys, and we're just going to get comfortable. And you can put your pen down. You don't need that for a little while. And just start to close your eyes and just settle into your seat. And just start to listen to the beat of the music. And start to just consciously start to slow your heartbeat. So it starts to beat in time. And just let that intellectual part of your mind just take a siesta for a few minutes. We'll be back, but we're going to take a little journey off into the world of our senses. And just start to take nice, long, deep breaths in. As you exhale, just start to feel all the tension just start to leave your body. As you sink into the chair underneath you. If you start to notice any thoughts pop up, just imagine them encased in a nice red balloon that just gently floats away into the air. And as you watch them go, just start to come back and focus once again on your breathing and that beat of your heart. Let your shoulders drop, your back relax. And start to become aware of your feet planted firmly on the ground. And know that you're safe. And once again, just focusing on your feet, notice that roots start to grow out of the bottom of your feet. Nice, strong, healthy roots that begin reaching deep down into the earth below you. They move through the floor, and down, down, deep into the earth. And as they start reaching down, they get stronger and thicker and wider. And you find yourself standing in the middle of an ancient forest, tall as an oak tree. You're keeping an awareness of those big, deep roots that are diving down deep into the earth below you. And turning up towards the sky, you begin to notice these branches reaching up. And turn your face towards the sun and notice this gold and yellow light coming down into your face, through the top of your head, traveling down through your body, filling every cell of your body. And as this yellow light travels all the way down your legs, it begins to go down the roots and deep into the earth. And when it meets the earth's energy, you begin to notice that that earth energy comes back up through those roots. Beautiful green light. And that green light comes up through the roots and fills every part of your body until it reaches out the top of your head to meet with the sky. Once again, breathing in that beautiful golden light through the top of your head. It once again travels down and out the roots into the earth. And you find yourself stable and strong, balanced equally between the powerful sky and the nurturing earth. And from this place of stability, start to take your senses out. Start to feel the world presently around you with all of your senses. And as you start to reach out, set the intention that all negative energy moves out of your sphere, and all that remains is loving, bright light. And you feel all your senses coming online. Feel that tingle, maybe down your spine, maybe down your fingers. And you just know. It's just that deep sense of just knowing. Now, keeping that sense of knowing firmly in your heart, start to come back into your body. Those roots are still strong down into the ground, and that earth is still stable below you. But something feels different. You feel like you're online. And when you're ready, we're going to come back into the room. And we're going to start shuffling our cards, because we're going to start pulling our first one. So, just take a minute if you just need to come back into your body. But our first card for today is going to be, what is important for me to know today? Another question you can also ask is, who do I need to be today? Depending on your deck, you might answer one easier than the other. We're just going to take a minute to shuffle your cards, and when you're ready, pull out the one that feels like it's resonating with you today. What's important for you to know today? And we're going to stay here for a couple of minutes, so take your time. Notice what you notice. Take on board the messages as they come through. So to give you an example, I pulled a card for myself for today. And I had the empty well, time to replenish. So some of the messages that came through from you were, I need a break. I need to take some time off. Hard to notice just what did the image say to you. All right, and we'll have a few minutes at the end if you haven't quite finished to come back. But the next card we're going to pull out, you can do it from the same deck or another deck if you have one to hand, is who or what is my supporting energy today? This is what I like to call our allies, who or what is showing up. And the allies can also be elements. They can be animals, they can be fairies and elementals. Who or what is my supporting energy today? So again, just to give an example, mine was the eagle spirit and freedom. So what does that mean to me when I think about it next to the empty well and time to replenish? How can that support me today in replenishing myself? And then in the final card, if you feel called to pull one more, I always like to ask this question: what will be the likely outcome if I actually listen to this advice? So if for me, again, if I listen to the guidance that I'm tired and I need to replenish, I need the support of this eagle spirit and freedom, what would be the result is feeling at home and coming back to being authentically myself. Is my superficial read on that. So what will be the outcome today if you actually listen and embody this advice that you've been given? And with this card too is now look back across all three of them. What story do you see? Or an evolution of a message? Something hit a nerve, maybe? And remember, this is a forecast. So we don't know the how, but what we're doing is we're priming ourselves to be ready and open for these opportunities when they come. And you may know, like depending on the guidance, there may be something that you already know that you need to do today. And just take another couple minutes just to wrap up the guidance for yourself, the messages for yourself today, and then we'll talk about them. Alrighty. So let's just finish off the sentence that you're on. And I'll come back in the room. I think, do you want to go to questions, Meg?
All right, yeah.
Megan, can you?
There's
Sorry.
there you are. There's, for some reason, there's some background noise started when you stopped the music.
I haven't changed anything.
Okay.
Is it really bad?
Well, it's just gone. We'll work with it. We'll roll with it. It only happens when you're not talking.
Interesting.
But thank you for that. Lovely. One
Talk
of
for
the
a minute.
things.
I'm going to try and do something with my microphone. I'll be right back. Keep talking.
Okay. Well, one of the things that came up for me when you were guiding us through that, Kate, was how important it is to frame questions in an open and empowering way. You know, like when I first started working with cards and even just wanting to access higher guidance, essentially, I think I did this with healers or with psychics or also with the cards, is like kind of coming from this desperate place of uh, needing answers, and sometimes also still when I'm in a stressful situation and I need to make a decision, I can get in that sort of that place of like something outside of me knows, and I need that thing outside of me to tell me do this or do this. And uh, for one, I just appreciate the grounding in the beginning to kind of help come into the present, like we talked about. But also the questions you framed are they're so open. It's like really creates this portal for guidance that's not so based in the intellect, I think, is what stands out to me. That's not so based in the monkey mind trying to solve a problem or find an answer.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and setting yourself up for success by asking good questions. And if you ask yourself, or you ask your cards, or you ask the pendulum, or whatever you're using, if you are not setting yourself up for success with a good question, you're going to get a confusing answer, and that's very frustrating and unhelpful in lots of different ways. So what I would like to suggest is that whenever you're asking anything, is that you take the presupposition that what I'm asking for is for my own personal soul growth, that I want to, whatever guidance I am getting today is for my highest good, and it's something that I have control over. This is really important. If you are asking about somebody else, or what are they doing, what should they do, you're giving your power away. You have no power over that. You might be able to get insights, but in terms of your own guidance and what breadcrumbs to follow, I really strongly cannot emphasize enough that you actually pay attention to what you have control over and what's important for your own personal growth.
So I have a question for you. I don't see any. If anyone has questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, but I'll keep asking questions if no one else does. So one question that comes up for me is like, say someone is starting to do this ritual on a daily basis, just getting grounded, becoming present, asking these three open-ended questions or some variation of them. Or maybe they ask some more open-ended questions specific to an issue. I'm thinking it could possibly be modified that way. What then? Like, so they take time, sit with it, allow the cards to speak on their own, look at the interpretation. And then how do you go about the rest of your day from there? Or like, what do you do with that information? Or what's your process look like to honor it?
Part of it is I'll go and have a shower, and that sounds like weird, but I get most of my downloads in the shower or walking on the trail. So so for instance, if I'm preparing a reading for a client, I will pull their cards and then I go away. I leave it. I walk away from them and I'll go and have a shower, I'll go for a walk, and I am just aware of what else is coming in, what other information is coming in. And there's something around, it's almost just letting it go, because you've got the messages, you've received the messages, and now it's letting go of attachment almost to the how is it going to show, because again we can start getting fixated on, well, how am I going to demonstrate forgiveness today, who do I need to forgive. There's something around even just the awareness of this information coming in, and I truly believe this changes something, right? It changes how you even show up in the world without you even consciously doing anything, because what's impacted your awareness of the world has changed. And there again, it kind of depends on the cards you're using or the information that you're getting. If you were told something specifically to do, like relax, then go and find ways to relax today. Or another one that clients love to hear is surrender. Like they love this message that comes in a lot for people, is how can I, even just asking yourself, like, how can I surrender today and let the answers come throughout the day? How can I be in joy today? Let the answer. So what you're doing is training your awareness to look for opportunities. Oh, there's a children's playground. I'm just going to go sit on the swings for a few minutes. That makes me happy. That brings me joy. It doesn't have to be mountain moving, earth shattering, everyday breakthroughs. That would be exhausting. Like these are little daily guidances of they're nudges, and for you to become aware of opportunities. Again, another classic example is in response to somebody. Maybe at work you're having a challenging, courageous conversation, and you remember at that point that your message for the morning was, what would love do right now? That is then comes back into your awareness. You're like, hang on, my normal response is going to be to bite this person's head off, but I'm going to pause. What would love do right now? And see how that changes your behavior. That's how I use this information. And I mean, well, but I do a year reading for myself, and then I do monthly readings, and then I do weekly readings, and I do daily readings. So I do a lot of readings. But they're signposts. There isn't it's not a crystal ball telling you exactly what's going to happen. There are flags of awareness for me.
Mm-hmm. And then what about like do you reflect on, I'm just thinking about building confidence in trust and intuition. Do you reflect on that? Is there any sort of completion with the day or the next day before you pull cards? Do you kind of reflect on how that went?
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend that too. Again, not everybody likes to journal, but journal is a super powerful way of doing that. And again, honoring in hindsight and in reflection is when we get a lot of lessons. So it's then looking back and honoring how you showed up that day, celebrating, I did take the chance to, I asked myself, what would love do right now? And I did do something that I wouldn't have done normally. I did take an opportunity to go and play on the swings because I needed to play today. And acknowledge and give yourself a high five. Like I did that. And also maybe notice where you could have and didn't, so that next time you do. And these also there is something here where the lessons build on each other. It's not like one day you need to be forgiving and then you're never forgiving again, right? It's strengthening that muscle of compassion and guidance and being a better version of yourself. Like the ideal is to be the best soul version of yourself. And that's what we're looking to do every day. And that also includes not being perfect and not doing it all right all the time, and actually giving yourself the love and compassion and acknowledging how far you've come, and acknowledging and honoring the journey, I think is important.
We have a couple questions here. They're related. One was, what questions do we ask for someone else? And the other question was, how do you approach readings for someone else that is different from readings for yourself?
Which question should I ask? So reading for somebody else, as in you're pulling the cards for somebody else, or you're asking a question about somebody else?
Well, I think maybe both.
If you're asking questions about somebody else, again, it comes back to asking good questions, right? And it's usually in relation to yourself. So for a relationship, let's just say, one way you could very simple reading is, where is my energy right now? One card. Where is their energy right now? And what's the energy between us? Super simple reading, but it's really insightful. Or there could be a past, present, future, where but I always like to do it in relation to you, because that's where you'll get the resonating is true. So how does Bob feel about me right now? One card. How does Bob feel about our relationship? How does Bob feel about our future? Like, there's a connection to you in that situation. Does that answer that question? I mean, there's so many different ways that you can use cards and readings that it's actually pretty endless. It's all about asking good questions.
And
Preparing for a reading for myself versus others.
yeah, so I think asking for someone else too, but one thing I want to clarify on that is, like, is there a need to, I'm just thinking about boundaries of, like, asking for information about someone else and having permission, and I think this comes with someone wanting you to pull for them, but also, like, where are the lines there with pulling cards to find out how someone else is feeling or doing? Like, is that really?
Well, part of it is you're never going to find out what their higher self doesn't want you to know. And I really firmly do believe that. It's not like you're opening their personal closet and going through their clothes, right? There is, and I do believe that the universal laws are in place, that you will never be told something without some level of their permission. And let's come back to, they're not telling you. This is you interpreting the reading of the cards. So this is your knowing of the cards. If they were sitting there looking at the cards, they might have a completely different read on that. So that's why you have to be careful with these, because they are an extension of you. And if you're not careful, you can really project onto an interpretation that actually isn't there, but you have an interest in the outcome. And so, as a general rule, I mean, I don't like to read about other people. And what, if I will read for anybody, it's what should you do in the situation? Because that's where I feel that there's the most power. But yeah, again, you're not spying on them, and it's right. What it might feel like, because it's all actually coming from you.
You're actually accessing your own knowing, yeah, or information, yeah, you've already picked up, and
or projection.
Or your projection on the situation. It's like the cards are opening a portal for you to connect with your own knowing. They're not magically telling you something right that you don't already know. And then I think the other piece of this is, if someone is asking you to do a reading for them, how do you approach that?
It's actually a lot easier sometimes, because there isn't a charge. But in terms of like the physical preparation, I'll do the same. I get grounded and ready, and I have a lot of card decks, so I let the cards, I'll scan and let the cards decide who wants to show up for this person. But I'll say, like, in the work that I do, I have set structured readings that I do for people every month or every year, or so there is kind of a rhythm of preparation that I will get into, but the ritual is pretty much the same. I light a candle, I light some incense, I burn some sage, make sure that I'm in a quiet space. There's places that I like to do it and that I feel grounded and stable in. I mean, is that answering the kind of the question, or was there more of a metaphysical angle to that?
I'm not sure. Eileen, do you have any follow-up questions based on what Kate just responded? And while you're thinking or typing that up, what I'll add to what you just shared is, this just reminds me of, this is actually something that was really emphasized when we were studying together at Earth-Based Institute in our coaching program, is the importance of ritual to entrain yourself into a certain way of being, into a certain mindset, like this daily ritual that you're offering up. It's super simple, but it's just like this ongoing way. And I like to, like, my daily rituals, I like to be sitting in the same space in front of my altar, like, do it. So my own body, my own mind, my like whole being is like, oh yeah, this is what we do when we're here every day. This is how we connect with intuition. And it sounds like you do that too when you're doing your readings, that you
I
have a bit
do.
of a
And
ritual to get into that
yeah, it
space.
doesn't, but it also doesn't, it's not exclusive to that. And so I think part of, and I've talked about this, I don't remember if I talked about it with you, but I've spoken about this recently where sometimes rituals can be and ceremonies can be really restrictive because then it's not spontaneous. And that means that, oh my God, I'm not at home. Therefore, I can't listen to the messages that are coming through right now because I'm not in my sacred space, and therefore I'm not going to listen. I think there's room for both. I think there's real power in having a ritual where you walk through and you have a sacred space. And you can download and be present, and having tools and tricks so that when you're out in the world where you're feeling, even just putting your roots down into the ground, like in Reiki, we talk about like putting our energy cord down into the ground. And there's knowing that it's self-awareness. Like, I'm feeling off balance right now. I'm feeling shaken. What do I need to do? I can put my roots down no matter where I am. I visualize it, put my roots down into the ground, and I'm instantly restabilized. There's one thing that I like to do is I have fun with visualizations. Like I've talked about, like the Care Bear stare, and I'll stand there and I just close my eyes and just shoot love and rainbows out from my heart. And I'll breathe. One of the things I'll do to clear my energy space is I'll breathe in and I'll imagine that, like, as I stomp my foot, that there's just a reverberation that just clears the space around me of all negative energy. And then nobody else around me knows what I'm doing, but I feel better and I feel back in my body and I feel present. So I think that's less of a ritual, but more of strategies, having strategies on hand.
Yeah. So Eileen has a follow-up, and Eileen, I don't know if I totally understand your question, but Kate, let me know if you do. So they pick the cards, but then is there a physical if there is a physical distance, you are picking the cards. How do you get yourself out of the way?
My ego, are you talking about?
I think so, yeah.
My physical body. I have to be there to
Yeah.
pick the cards. Staying out of projection. It's conditioning, and it's recognizing if there's an emotional charge, especially if it's somebody that I care about and I'm doing a reading for them. And am I attached to the outcome? It takes practice. It's a lot of practice, and being honest with myself if I'm projecting. And I'll say, like, listen, I think there's some projection here. I just want you to be aware. If this still resonates as true with you, but this hit a nerve for me, and I don't know if it was my cleanest read on this, but then it's up to the client whether they, again, if that's like a one-off. I don't. The readings that I do are very journey based, and we're looking like at the year ahead, and we're looking at the month ahead, so it's less specific and charged. Mainly a lot of the work that I'm doing is coaching, and it's and then in hindsight. So this is the month that just showed up for you. In hindsight, let's go through it, integrate it, and then let's look ahead to the month that's coming ahead. So I think if what you're asking is in terms of how do you get your ego out of the way, is first being aware that it's there, and making sure that you're as clean and unattached to the outcome as possible.
It reminds me too of what you were saying earlier around like is there a charge around the information, and is it just pure information, or are you starting to interpret and create stories? At least
Because
for me.
a lot of times you might not know. So let's use you as an example. So if I haven't talked to you in a couple of weeks, I don't know the context of your life, and I sit down and do a reading for you. I'm like, well, this is what I'm getting, and this is a lot of it's feeling. There's this feeling around. So again, I'll look at an entire reading and I will get a read on, how does this make me feel? How does this story in front of me make me feel? And so I'll make a note of that. And if I don't know the specifics, it's going to be a case of, well, this is what I'm getting. And where the validation comes back is like, oh my God, like this just happened to me, and then this, and then this. So you don't have to know the details. You just have to trust what's coming through and be okay with, oh, actually, I have no idea what you're talking about, and being okay, well, it didn't resonate, and that's okay too. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad intuitive if I don't say something that hits exactly home all the time. Does that answer that question?
I think so. Eileen's nodding. And I know you've pulled readings for me where you've had zero context and they've been some of the best readings. So it's like, I think there's wisdom in that too, is like the less you know, sometimes the better.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a classic example. Actually, I said very recently to Megan, she asked me to just pull a reading. It was an emergency question, and I had no context. I didn't even know what the question was, and we was texting back and forth, and I just said, "Listen, It was a yes." I said, "Is it yes or no?" She's like, "Yes." So I just asked, "This is the journey, yes? This is the journey." I didn't know what we were talking about. I genuinely had no idea. Does she move house? Does she leave the country? Like, I had nothing. And she was like, "Okay, thanks." That made a lot of sense. So, like,
and you know what I'll add to that too is from the perspective of being someone asking for outside support. What I've found really helpful, with especially in working with Kate and having her do readings for me, is that sometimes this particular situation, I had to make a major life decision in 24 hours. And I was just not at my most grounded. And like, I was definitely having feelings, but my monkey mind was very much participating. And for me, well, this was a yes no question, which I didn't even think that was so simple. It's almost just like just calling her in and reading the energy of yes and reading the energy of no. Like, I hadn't even thought of that because her doing that helped me access what was already in me, on both sides, and just really helped me calm down, ground, focus on, yes, this is the information I've been getting about both of these, but I can now organize it and make sense and kind of clean out the clutter. And same with other readings I've gotten. It's like, I've found with Kate, she asks questions that I didn't even think of because I'm too close to it. But it's not like she necessarily is the one giving me the answers. She's just asking the questions to help me connect with my own knowing in the matter. And so I've found that super helpful.
because right? You know. And that's when if somebody else says to you, actually, again, this example was the logical response was no. Like, if you'd have asked anybody, we'd be like, nope, nope, don't do it, don't do it. And you're like, but something's telling me yes, man. And so, the reading just came back and was, hell yes. And,
Yeah.
oh. And then I found out the context. I was like, I would have never told you to do that.
Yeah. As my friend, she would have told me no all the way.
So,
And I was thinking it was a no, but as soon as this opportunity came along, I'm like, I would have never thought I'd say yes, but that's what I feel like it's going to happen. It feels right. So anyway, I know we're past time. Thank you all for staying over a bit. I want to make sure that we wrap up here, and I will be sending out a recording. But one of the things I wanted to speak to is that Kate's starting an 11-day challenge, which I'm planning to participate in. It's a free challenge right around the topic of what we're talking, is just like getting in a ritual or routine of listening to your intuition. Do you want to speak to that, Kate? I'm sure you can do better than I can.
thank you. Yeah, so this was also a guided inspiration. I was told to do 11 days, and I just picked May 1st to May 11th, and then I was like, now what do I do? And so it literally is going to be what I do every day, and people are going to do it with me. So the intention being that it's called stop overthinking, let your intuition lead. And every day I'm going to do a reading that it will be sent out to everybody in the morning with them encouragement for them to pull their own card. And pretty much what we've just done is, what did you get today? And then we'll do it's all on your own time. It's not going to be live, but it's going to be as it comes. I have no curriculum. I have no agenda. It's going to be as impactful for me as it is for everybody else. But the idea being that we're going to be training our intuition and giving it 11 so days of taking the lead and seeing what happens, following the nudges, following the gold nuggets, following the signs as they come in. And it's going to be pretty simple, but hopefully very powerful for everybody who's there. And yeah, so hopefully, Megan, you will send out. Oh, thanks.
Yep, I just put the link in the chat. It's right on our homepage. You can sign up, and I'll also send it out in the recording. You follow up email after if you all are interested.
But if you liked what we did today and you're looking for a little bit of structure, and just to get into a habit, this would be great for you. And you can always email me and touch base. It just won't be a live group program, and that was specifically designed that way because there was a need for people to have their own personal power and authenticity around when it was good for them to do that without it being dictated. So yeah, it's your own journey, but I'll be there guiding you, and it's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Kate, for giving us this wonderful gift today. It's really been fun. Thank you all who've listened in live. Lovely to see your faces smiling back.
Again, if anybody wants to share, I know we kind of ran a little tight on time. We were running over, but it's always interesting to hear ahas. I love hearing the stories of this came out and this is what I saw and this is the messages that I got and this means this to me. And so if you feel like it, are welcome to email and share and just have it witnessed if you feel so inclined. And I love hearing stories like that. So yeah, enjoy.
Yeah. And the last little piece I'll share too is we're going to do next month, May 19th, be continuing this series. It's going to be transforming trauma is the topic. So it's sort of like, we talked a little bit today about overthinking and getting in the head as a way that this is like a block of intuition. And there are all kinds of ways the ego can come in and get in the way of our intuition, get in the way of us bringing our true selves into the world, our medicine. And a lot of times that habit or that whatever triggers us shifting into that place is rooted in trauma. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's conditioning. Sometimes it's just simple as building the muscle, building the practice. Sometimes it goes a lot deeper, and it's rooted in our deepest wounds or a past life, a current life event that hasn't fully resolved itself. So my dear friend Joseph McCaffrey is going to be joining us. He's a trauma healing specialist, a licensed counselor in Arizona and Washington, and one of my longtime friends and dear buddies. So I can't wait to share his wisdom with you as well. If you'd like to join, you'll get the invite by automatically just because you signed up for today. So hope to see you there if you're interested. And if there's anything you want to share, feel free to reach out after the event. I'll send a follow-up later. We'd love your feedback. Anything you send, I'll pass on to Kate as well. So thank you all so much.
Have a good one.
Many blessings.
Bye.
Bye.